All right. So, the last section that you're going to compose is going to be an evaluative feedback and summary section. And this is an A part and a B part. So just like the artifact had the actual item that you use with your students and then your reflection on it, this feedback and summary is going to work the same way. So you're going to have a 1 to 2 page summary and discussion of feedback on your teaching. So that will, it will include things like SEIs, but it'll also explain, I've been observed by my TA coordinator who said this about me. I've given my students midterm feedback tools and they've said this about my teaching, right? So it includes a richer picture of all the different ways that you can get feedback on your teaching than just what you've done so far. And then, so that's that first bubble, all right, 1 to 2 pages, single-spaced, where you explain all of that. And then you're going to have the section that's the more raw data, okay? So you're going to include the summary of your overall SEI scores. All right, so that is something that the SEI software automatically generates for you. It's that cumulative career report, right, where you just see every class you've taught and the SEIs for the whole thing. And then you have a choice to make. You can either choose to include the SEI report for one course. And what that does is kind of breaks down question by question how many students or what percentage of your class answered with what score for each of those questions. And it would hopefully include the comments as well from your SEIs from that class. Or you can choose to use 3 individual student evaluations. Now, it tends to be the case, since SEIs are not required by every department and every school on campus, for those folks who are in a program where students complete discursive feedback evaluations at the end of the course, using pencil and paper in class, and often the case, those students then don't fill out the SEIs, right? So you may have very partial, very limited information on your SEIs, and so this is a chance for those individual student evaluations to explain both the feedback tool that you use, that your department uses, and also to give a representative picture of who you are. But you're certainly not limited to using 3 individual student evaluations if you're only in the case that you don't have a course SEI. I don't think I said that very clearly. Anybody can choose to include 3 individual student evaluations rather than an SEI report. Many folks who don't have an SEI report for their class will use this 3 individual student evaluations, but it's an option that's open to everyone. All right. And yet you get to choose them. You get to choose which 3. So you're going to want to pick 3 that really put you in a good light, right? So the questions that should be answered in this 1-page summary are things like, why do you assess your teaching? How are you looking to improve? What methods have you used to assess your teaching? So like I mentioned, you use end of semester feedback, but if you also use midterm feedback, if you have other ways of getting feedback on you as a teacher and how it's going, what do you use? How do you use that? What methods have worked well for getting feedback? What has not worked well? And how would you summarize the feedback you've received? So this is a really great chance to read through all of your student comments and get all the warm fuzzies and talk about, my students think I'm enthusiastic and dedicated and and organized and they know I care about them and all of those things. And you get to do that sort of quick content analysis for us in terms of summarizing the kinds of feedback that you've gotten as an instructor. And then what we'd also want to see in this evaluative summary is, how have you integrated the feedback that you've received into your teaching? So were you observed one time and somebody encouraged you to pay attention to the fact that you seem to ignore students seated to your right? And so then you started having a trick. You put your water bottle on the right-hand side of the table so you remember to call on people on the right side, and since then that works a lot better. Something, right? So some kind of specific, what's something that somebody has given you, a specific detail you've received about your teaching that you've managed to incorporate. I'd encourage you to think broadly about what counts as feedback. So some of the feedback is just things you have observed. You watch your students every day, right? It's okay to say that the feedback that you see is that they do really well on the assignment, right? You develop this review tool and they find it helpful. One person said so concretely, but you also saw that your grades were higher in your section. So that's a success, right? So there's lots of different ways to collect feedback. But we also want you to reflect on the evidence. So don't just state what the feedback has been, but really help analyze it, right? Extract the themes, draw these connections. Again, this is a chance for you to tell the same story from your teaching statement all the way through about this is who you are as a teacher, and how any changes that you've made fit into that theme. This is also your chance to frame areas for growth in a positive way, right? So do tell us about how, this is something you're looking forward to continuing to improve, right? I mean, we all have that. Everybody is always improving as a teacher. You never actually arrive as a good teacher. You just are always on the journey, right? So talk about the ways that you still have chances to grow in a positive light. And you can certainly organize your feedback either by themes, right? So these are things that I have heard about how I prepare for class. These are things about how I make students feel included. Or you could organize it by course or chronology. Again, whatever makes the most sense to make it the easiest for your reader to understand the story that you're telling with the feedback that you're trying to provide.